Hey everybody, welcome back to Everything Tech, and today we're going to be installing Windows 10 in VMware Workstation. Before we get started, you want to make sure you have a copy of Windows 10 and a product key to go along with it. I understand that Windows 10 was also released digitally more than it was released in a box copy, much like any previous version of Windows, so I'll show you how you can download the ISO file directly from Microsoft in case you don't have a disk with Windows 10. But if you do, you can go ahead and use the Windows 10 disk and it'll work just fine. And to get the ISO file, we're just going to jump into Google here and search Windows 10 ISO. And usually the first link here is the one you want to go to, or it says Windows 10 ISO-Microsoft. That should take you to Microsoft's official page where you can download the media creation tool. You can download the tool, but before you do that, you may want to look through all of these tips and tricks or different download options if you want, and it'll even teach you how to create a USB flash drive, DVD, or download the ISO file with the media creation tool. And once you're ready, you click on download the tool and it should download the tool. It's a very lightweight application. It shouldn't take too long to download. And this is what you use to download the ISO file. And that's going to ask me for permission to use my computer, which is why the computer screen went black right now, or the video screen went black. Here we are in the application. I'm going to go ahead and close off all of these windows so we see this one here. And here we see the terms and conditions. We're going to go ahead and agree to those. And it starts getting a few things ready. Now it's going to ask you if you want to upgrade your PC or create an installation media for another PC. Now if you want to upgrade the computer you're using, you're going to click on this, but since we are making a virtual machine, we're going to be creating the installation media for another PC. We're going to click next, and you can see here that all these options are grayed out. And to make sure you can select the version you want, you're going to uncheck this box here, because it automatically detects your computer system and detects the ideal operating system to install. But since I want to download the 32-bit version, this is where you would uncheck this little box here and select 32-bit. But going from top to bottom here, you can select the language you want or the language that you have a product key for. I have, of course, English United States, so that's what I'll be using. For Windows 10 Edition, you can choose Windows 10, which is, I believe, Windows 10 Pro, Windows 10 Home. And I'm not sure what the N version is. I think I've seen it before, but I haven't really bothered to take a look at it since I'm always in the Pro version. But you can download any of these three versions. Now keep in mind that whichever ISO file you download, you can't change later. So make sure you choose your language based on whichever language you want to use the operating system in. So if I choose Spanish for Mexico, it's the only language that the operating system will use, and you can't change that later on in the installation. So make sure you select the language that you want to use. And for architecture, you can choose either 32, 64, or download the ISO file with both versions on it. I'll be choosing 32-bit because my computer's virtual machine software doesn't support 64-bit without it changing the motherboard, which I'm not going to bother with. So 32-bit it is, and we're going to click next. And it says make sure the edition you've selected from the installation media matches the one for your PC. It says that because it detects Windows 10 Pro, and I'm downloading a different version of it. So I'm just going to click OK just to get rid of that dialog box. But next we're going to select to download our ISO file. Now you can choose to download the USB flash drive version, and that's going to create a USB flash drive that is bootable with Windows 10 on it, although you do need at least 4 gigs of storage in order to create that installed media. But we're going to be downloading the ISO file, so that's what we're going to be clicking, and we click next. Now it's going to ask us where we want to store Windows 10. You can store it anywhere on your computer. I would recommend storing it on your desktop because that's the easiest place to find anything if you're going to be using it immediately after it's done. Once you click on save, it's going to start downloading Windows 10, the ISO file, and it shows you a little progress bar here of how long it's going to take to download the program or Windows version. Since I already have it, I'm just going to wait till it's done downloading so I show you what goes on after it's done installing or done downloading, and then we're going to go on with the installation of Windows. After it's done creating the ISO file for you, it allows you to open a DVD burner in the program and burn the ISO file to a DVD. So this is kind of convenient. All you do is click on Open DVD Burner, and it opens the Windows Disk Image Burner, which allows you to burn Windows 10 to an ISO file. So if you want to do that, this is where you can do it. And if you do this, I do recommend you verify disk after burning, just to make sure that the disk is fine and the disk was created successfully. So that's how you would do that. But if you don't want to do this, it shows you the path where you have the Windows ISO stored. So we're going to click on that, and it shows you directly where it is, and you can take this anywhere you want. But since we did store it on the desktop, it's going to be easy to find. And after we're done with the program, we click finish, and it starts cleaning up everything it made before it closes. And once that's done, we can jump right into Workstation here. And there's 3 different ways to install a virtual machine. The first one, of course, is clicking on this little plus here, but if you don't have the home tab and you accidentally erase it, the way you get the home tab back is by going to tabs and go to home tab. So the first method of installing a virtual machine is by clicking the plus, and that launches the wizard. The second one is by doing Control N, and that launches the wizard again. And the third and final way of doing it is by going to File, New Virtual Machine. Whichever way you choose, they all lead you to the same virtual machine wizard. And we're going to be doing a typical install, mainly because I'm new to Workstation, but if you're used to custom, you can go ahead and use that as well. There's nothing wrong with options here, but we're going to do typical for this installation. In this next step, it's going to ask you how you want to install Windows. If you want to use an installer disk, an image file, or an ISO file, or you want to install the virtual machine later. Now, if you did create a DVD in the previous step, you can go ahead and use this if the DVD is still in your DVD drive. If you took it out for some reason, you can go ahead and use the ISO file since that's already on your computer. And in our case, we're going to be using the ISO file, and we're going to go ahead and click Browse, and we're going to select Windows. I already had it here, but I'm going to go ahead and use the one we just downloaded. So it didn't detect the operating system for some reason, and I'll show you what you can do. You can still continue and click next, and it's going to ask you what version of Windows it is. So we're going to select Windows and Windows 10. Then we're going to click next. Now, if it does detect your operating system, you would skip those steps and go right to naming the virtual machine and selecting its location. You can name it anything you want. I'm going to keep it at Windows 10, and you can store it anywhere you want. You would just click on Browse and select where you want to store it at. I'm going to keep it at the virtual machines folder that was created by the program, but you would select anywhere you want to store it. Once you click on you select your storage location, you can go ahead and click next. And now we're going to create a disk size for the virtual machine. And although 60 gigs does seem reasonable, keep in mind that the operating system does take at least 20 gigs of storage, so subtract 20 from 60 and you're going to get a very low storage option here, actually like 40 gigs or so. So we're going to give it 128 gigs, and make sure you put that 0.0 at the end so the system knows it's 128 gigs. I know of a program that if you don't put that 0.0 after it, it's going to think it's 128 megabytes for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, next we're going to choose one of these 2 options. Now, you can split the virtual machine into multiple files, or you can store the virtual disk as a single file. I go for storing it as a single file because it's easier that way. And if you do select the virtual machine into multiple files, it may reduce the performance of very large disks. So if you have a 500 gig disk in the virtual machine, or if I was to make my virtual machine 1 terabyte of storage, it's going to become slower. I don't know how slower or by what percentage does it slow down, but I like to keep it in a single file rather than multiple files, and besides, I don't have to move the virtual machine anywhere. So you can choose any of these 2 options, whichever one suits you best. I'm going to select store virtual disk as a single file. Whichever option you choose, you're always going to end up in the same spot as me, which is allowing you to tweak the settings, and it gives you a little list here with an overview of all of the settings that the virtual machine is going to have. And we see here that it only has 1 gig of RAM, so in order to change that, you just go into customize hardware, and right away in the memory tab we can select how much RAM we want to give this. So I'm going to give it 8 gigs. I have 16 gigs of RAM, so I can allocate half of that to the virtual machine. And next we're going to go into processors. We're going to give it 1 processor and 2 cores. So it's going to be a dual core processor, and total processor cores is 2. You can select up to 16 processors and 16 cores for each processor. So let's see what happens if we select 16. 256 processing cores, and it says the virtual machine may perform poorly or fail to power on because of the total number of processors, which is outrageous. So we're just going to give it 1 and make it a dual core processor. Now you can change any of these other settings if you like, or if you're used to changing these settings. I'm not going to, because I don't need to change them except for the display, which allows you to select how much graphics memory you want to allocate to the virtual machine. My graphics card only supports 1 gig, so that's all I'm going to give it. I won't give it 512 because that's very little for Windows 10, so 1 gig is just enough. And if you want to add or remove any of these features here, you just click on the add. It's going to ask you for permission to use your computer. And here is a list of all of the features that you can add or remove. So if I accidentally remove printer, this is where you would add it. And we're just going to go ahead and continue. We're going to close that page there and click finish. Most other virtual machines automatically start as soon as you're done tweaking the settings, but this one we're going to have to power on manually by clicking on the power on this virtual machine. It starts to boot up, and that's good, but I just accidentally clicked, and as you can see, my mouse is gone. So in order to release the mouse, we're going to do Control-Alt and go full screen. And it says up there to release input, press Control and Alt, and you can see that this bar is up here. So I'm going to show you how you can change that, but first let me explain to you what overscan is, or underscan. And you can see here the black bars, that is underscan. And as you can see, you probably won't be able to see this if I leave it this way. So I'm going to jump into view, auto size, and stretch to guest. Now it's not completely full screen, but still you can see much more of the window here now. And I have to remember that I did this because later on when we install the graphics drivers, it's going to go back to that underscan. It's going to look bad, so you can always go back here and change it back to auto fit guest once you install the graphics drivers. And another thing, when we're in view, we're going to jump into exclusive mode. It's going to say to get out of exclusive mode, press the Control and Alt key in combination, and that's going to get rid of this bar at the top if you just want to use the virtual machine alone. So we're going to go ahead and enter exclusive mode and continue the installation of Windows. Now, if you remember that I said to choose your language wisely, this is why I said it, because here in the installation itself, I can only select English because it's the only language that I selected. If you were to select Spanish for Mexico or Italian or German, you would only select that language here. You can change the time and currency format to anywhere in the world, and the keyboard method anywhere in the world as well, but the language to install remains whatever you chose when downloading the ISO file. So we're going to go ahead and click next once you select all your options, and we're going to click on install now. Keep in mind that this is also the same steps for installing Windows 10 on a regular computer. So if you want to install it on your laptop or reinstall it on your laptop or your desktop, this is the steps you would have to go through. Next, we're going to put in our product key, but if you don't have a product key or don't want to put in your product key, like I don't, because then someone's going to take it, you can click on I don't have a product key, and it's just going to continue with the installation. I remember Windows 8 didn't allow you to do that. You actually had to put in a product key. Next, we're going to select our edition. Now, if you don't have a product key, you can install any edition you want. I, of course, have the Windows 10 Pro that I upgraded from Windows 7, and Windows 10 Education, which was given to me by the Computer Science Department at my school. And the Computer Science Department program that I am currently enrolled in also gave me Windows 10 Home, the edition. So I'll be using Pro for this installation, but you can use Home or Home Single Language or whichever version you want. And you can see that their architecture is all x86, which is a 32-bit. And we're going to go ahead and click Next. And next we're going to agree to the terms and conditions. You can go ahead and read that if you like. And now we're going to choose Custom or Install Windows Only. And it isn't an advanced method, but it's the only method you can choose. Because if you do upgrade, there's really nothing to upgrade from because the disk is empty. So we're going to click on Custom. Now if you're going to be doing this on a desktop or a laptop and you want to clean your hard drive and completely delete everything off of it, you would go with Custom. But if you want to upgrade, you would go with this option. In this case, we're going to go with Custom. And this is where you would format your hard drive and delete everything off of it. And you just click here. Since this is a brand new hard drive, we're actually going to create a new partition. And a maximum partition of 131, I believe it was. But if you have used your computer in the past, you should see something like this. And the way you would reset your hard drive and erase everything off of it. And the way I do it is I always delete the first partition, then go for the second partition, and that gives you all your storage back. And now you can fresh install Windows. And click on New Partition. And it's going to create a new partition, and then you can click Next and it starts installing Windows. Now this step here is going to take a while, and depending on what hard drive you're using, if you're using a hard drive or an SSD, it's going to take a while, so you may want to sit back and relax for a bit. Now it's going to ask us who owns this PC. If your work or school owns it, you select the first option. If you own it, you select the second one. Of course, I own this computer since it is a virtual machine. You don't need to select school owns it. You own it because it's a virtual machine. We're going to go ahead and click next, and now it's going to ask you to sign into your Microsoft account. If you don't want to do this, you can go ahead and skip this step. And next you can name the virtual machine or the Windows 10 installation. I'm going to name it Alex, and you can choose to select a password. I'm not going to because I'm bad with passwords, so I'm just going to click next. And now you're going to select if you want to use Cortana. I never use Cortana, and I don't genuinely feel like I should ever use Cortana, but if you want to use Cortana, you can go ahead and select that. I didn't select it because it just eats up resources on your computer, and I honestly have never used it. Next, it's going to start getting your computer ready by installing the necessary resources to boot into Windows 10, and then it's up to you to install all the necessary drivers after that in order to have your computer working at its fullest. And finally, we boot directly into Windows 10, and as you can see, it doesn't look the best. And we're going to go ahead and install the VMware tools. So in order to do that, we're going to release the mouse from the virtual machine, and we're going to go up at the blue bar at the top. We're going to jump into VM and install VMware tools. Next, we're going to click on install, and it should take a while to actually have the image disk mounted to your computer. There we go, DVD drive, VMware tools. We're going to go ahead and click that and run setup. We're going to click yes, and the installation begins. So we're going to go ahead and click next. We can choose between typical, complete, or custom for the installation type. So I'm going to select complete. You can select typical or custom if you like. I'm going to select complete because it installs everything. We're going to click next and install, and everything starts installing, and all the drivers are going to get installed. Stuff that it needs to run your keyboard, your mouse, internet drivers, and stuff like that. So just be patient. It takes a while. And now we're in Windows 10, and as you can see, the resolution remains really bad at a 4:3 ratio. So we're just going to go ahead and right click and go into display settings. And once in display settings, we're just going to scroll all the way down and go to advanced display settings, and that's going to allow us to select our resolution. You can see it's at 1024 by 768, but we can select up to 4K, full 4K resolution, 3840 by 2160, but since my monitor supports up to 1080p, that's what I'll be selecting. Now you can't select any of these other resolutions. It's just going to be zoomed in, and you're going to have to scroll on your desktop, which is something you hardly ever see. So we're going to go ahead and select 1080p and go ahead and apply. And I'm going to keep this settings. And remember what I said about the underscan, these black bars? And this is where you would go back and change the settings by going to View, Auto Size, and Auto Fit Guests. And you can see here it goes to the full screen here, and it's telling me that an update is required for OneDrive, which leads me to teaching you how to update your computer. It's important that you update your computer because sometimes Microsoft releases updates that help patch security features, and it's important to keep your computer up to date security wise because of course new viruses are coming out every day. And as you can see here, it's already downloading and installing updates. And a thing to note is if you make a DVD with Windows on it, it's only going to have the updates up until that day. So if you use that disk later on, let's say a few months from now, it's going to have the updates from the day you made it back and not really from the day you made it forward. So which is why you may need to check for updates before continuing with any installation. You want to make sure your computer is completely up to date, so you just check for updates here. And to activate your computer, you just go down here to the activation tab. And it's going to say here, we couldn't activate Windows because I didn't put a product key, and there's really no digital rights to this. So if you upgraded from Windows 7 or Windows 8, it should activate by itself. But since I didn't put any product key or anything, you just go to change your product key. If you don't have one, you can go to store and buy one. And you can buy it directly from the operating system, which is really cool. You don't have to go into Microsoft Edge or any other web browser. You can just buy it here. And this version of Windows costs $199.99. So if you want to go ahead and downgrade to a different version, you can select which version of Windows you like or which one best suits you for the price. But this one's going to cost you $199.99. And you can enter your product key right here. And you would put it in here. So this is a fake product key, but it's gonna tell you it's fake. But that's how it would look like. This is where it would go. If it checks out, it should activate, and you should be good to go. And that's it for today on how to install Windows 10 in VMware Workstation. The next tutorial should be about Windows Vista and eventually Windows XP. Again, with that being said, thank you all for watching. See you all in the next video.